rain doesn't.
Even now, we're working this tournament, this veterans tournament, 320, so even now, there's multiple sites going on. I mean, we've had games already where there's games going on both high school, 320 campus.
Well, if you take the track, it's here's the middle school one.
Yeah.
There was nowhere to park. Now, all those buses could have been up in there. They just opened up all those other parking spots. Yeah, 'cause and the city supervisors are gonna be in there. You can have them, and also you go parking, they come across the street. Yeah, yeah. So, which points do you want me to speak on? Do you want to speak on
You can go throughout the American support if that's easier that way, you know.
whatever works?
You can introduce me as the Rapid City Sports Commissioner. And it was trying to showcase one of the best groups in the state. I mean, maybe the guys from the facilities call it a minor league state.
It is.
That's Mr. Musto was in here to make it.
We had a college coach come in here last week. They just can't believe it.
And we're looking at, obviously, the Marcos colleges to attempt to come back this. And they're just like track coaches. If you have decent weather, they're coming. And we've looked at going from Scottsbluff all the way up to Jamestown, wherever the weather is nice, they can track.
We had 6 or 7 colleges reach out to us for, it's literally walking train. Are you doing, is your field available in this weekend?
What's your turnaround as far as getting the concessions ready?
Well, that's what we're going to figure it out this fall. We were unprepared for the demand this year.
Okay.
We had some major things up here.
Good afternoon and welcome to our Legal and Finance Committee meeting. Today is Wednesday, May 31st, 2023. Let's please start with a roll call and determination of quorum, please.
Armstrong.
Here.
Jones.
Here.
Nordstrom.
Here.
Roseland.
Here.
Solomon.
Here.
Wonderful, thank you. Adoption of the agenda.
Second.
I have a motion by Mr. Solomon, second by Mr. Nordstrom. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay, now's the time for general public comment. This is a time for members of the public to discuss or express concerns to the council on any issue not on the agenda. Action will not be taken at the meeting on any issue not on this agenda except by placement on the agenda by unanimous vote of the council members present. We do have 2 public speaker request forms. Okay, let's call up Doris Lowing. Welcome, thank you for being here.
Thank you, Laura, and thank you, Board. I'm here representing on the Executive Director of the South Dakota Stock Growers Association, and item 12 is the reason why I'm standing here. 2 things. Number 1, we have had a relationship with the City of Rapid City since 1956 when we built our building, and they, in agreement, put the parking lot next to us. And so now, for the last 2 years, we have been left in the dark by the city and by Property Melt. And they're trying to sell this piece of property, obviously, without offering it to the public or at least offering it to the South Dakota stock growers. There's 2 major issues that I don't know if the city is aware of. There is a stairwell that was built in 1956 that gives access to the basement, which is the train station right now. That was Rapid City or Black Hills Novelties in 1956. The second is a revocable non-build easement that will affect our building completely, making us cover all of our windows on a brick structure, some of which is in the historic registrar as being original windows. So both of these are items of which I want consideration taken. I was in contact with Mr. Landine earlier and asked if I could have the value in what this freeboard was being done. He has been very vague. He has told me in an email that they are not ready to take action but he will be sending them the value and opinion shortly. I would like to know who them is and why the stock growers will not be involved. And I've also been told they're not going to disclose the amount today, which it is on the agenda. I see item for June 5th on the city council hearing date. So I just want the city to be understood that we want to be full disclosure and we want to be involved in this process because this is detrimental to us. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you. Okay, the next person up, Wayne Sullivan. And David, oh, I can't say this last name.
Dolan.
Dolan, oh, thank you. David Dolan, welcome.
Thank you, appreciate that. Again, Wayne Sullivan, General Manager of Post 22 Baseball. Dave Dolan, Rapid City Sports Commission. We're here just about the receptacles that are outside of our stadium. As you know, the city made a large financial investment into Fitzgerald Stadium, and unfortunately the receptacles are an eyesore, and visitors that come in for our events, state tournaments, and so forth, and all of the organizations also agree that it is an eyesore, and we want to showcase what we have here in Rapid City. And for our larger events, if we were to remove the receptacles, we would gain 50+ parking spots. We have met with Public Works to find a permanent solution for moving them. However, no viable option has been determined outside of purchasing land and investing in a new site. Public Works, they are willing to remove the cans for the week of our big tournaments. Could we get the lot striped for maximized opportunities for parking? And also, as you know, the Firecracker Classic, we have a large firework display. This would also allow more fans to be able to park and witness our fireworks display. Public Works has also agreed to partner about putting out PSAs so the public does know when it is shut down during those times. We do feel this is an opportunity to show collaboration and to address a problem temporarily while we search for our long-term solution. Our goal would be to move the receptacles for our large tournaments. It's not enough time at this point. We do have a collaborative one with 320 starting this week, but we do have national regionals in August, and then again our Firecracker that starts in late June. So our dates would be June 27th to July 1st, July 4th, and then August 1st to August 7th. And the team Post 22 has proven a good partner and at Fitzgerald Stadium because we want to pursue other larger events coming in, albeit college events, World Series eventually again. Dave, anything else?
Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you. And Garth Wadsworth. Welcome. Thank you for being here.
Good afternoon, Council. There we go. I'm here today to just touch very quickly on the discussion regarding the parking lot between Stock Growers and Property Meld. As a member of Elevate City or an employee of Elevate City, we have great connections with the business community and we've been able to do some preliminary outreach. I am also a member of the Parking Advisory Board. And so we've had a few common themes come up. So one, safety. Some folks have expressed concerns walking down the street at night or after sunset during the winter. And I'd like to point out that while that is a valid concern and we do think something needs to be done to address that, that is not a parking issue. Quite frankly, I think additional parking lots do very little to improve safety. It's not a parking issue, right? We need to invest in safety measures. And the easiest way to improve safety on the streets, on the sidewalks, is to make sure we have additional people, eyes on the street, to make sure folks feel comfortable walking down the street so that they do have access, safe access to parking. Again, obviously there's a lot of talk about housing, right? Everyone in the community needs access to housing. The easiest way to improve the number of people, right, in a given location is to invest in housing and make sure we have multifamily housing options downtown so we have eyes on the street. I would point to the recent success of the Ambassador program. No offense to any of the ambassadors, but if there's a serious incident, the little old ladies in the red t-shirts can do very little to help. But they do go a long way in making sure everyone feels safe because they provide a presence, a friendly presence. And we can do that naturally, organically, by making sure we just have additional people who spend time in that location throughout all hours of the day. we can do that while providing additional housing options for the community. The second piece is jobs and employment. The majority, well, not the majority, but a lot of that lot is leased up by Property Mill, right? They are willing to give up and relinquish some of those parking spots that ultimately serve their business. And they're going to do that in exchange for jobs, again, housing options. And so some of the members of the business community have expressed that the loss of those parking lots or parking spots ultimately hurt their business operations. What we're neglecting to discuss is how we replace those parking spots with additional people, additional money, additional income that then circulates within the local economy. Those are customers who are going to go and support those businesses downtown. And the research is pretty clear. The more time people spend on foot, the more money they spend. And ultimately, that is good for the community. That is good for businesses. So we look forward to the update. Thanks for the time.
Great, thank you. And if all the people that filled out a speaker request form can stand by, we will address these issues as they come up. So thank you. Okay, we'll close public comment right now and we'll move right along. We'll go to start with number 3. Finance Department, we'll go to Director Ainsley for 3 through 7, please.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. The first item is simply a volunteer that's being added for our workers' compensation. She is a part of the RSVP program. The number 4 is to our annual resolution that amends certain fees. As you read through, you can see that very few fees are changing. There are a couple minor edits. Number 5 is a resolution for an abatement of nuisances. That is a correction to one that was already done. That was for some snow and ice that was removed. And then there is a resolution for property surplus that is going to allow the Public Works to use an existing loader, I believe, for some trade-in value. And then lastly is the general fund cash balance report. I did receive a question from an individual that apparently a chart that we usually include, I forgot to include. My apologies over that. But the undesignated cash balance in the general fund as of the end of April 30th was $9.3 million.
Okay, we have some people in the queue. If you can stand by. Mr. Solomon, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. May I direct a question to Director Ainsley, please?
Go ahead.
You might be the right one. I'm not sure. It might be Director Fisher as well. Looking at the fee schedule for parking, what's the justification for raising that? I know it's a CPI increase, which of course CPI right now is crazy high. So is there what's the justification to say that this is what it's worth to the citizens, or do we price them out of paying for parking spots, those sort of issues?
Thank you very much for the question. In general, that particular fee schedule, as I understand, was originally adopted to include a CPI increase, and that really is to ensure that some of the projects that are completed, for example, the parking ramp project that's being done every time a project like that goes out to bid, every year, of course, the costs continue to increase. And so, unfortunately, it does increase the cost for the consumers, but in order for that fund to be able to complete the projects that are identified, revenue has to be raised. And unfortunately, in government, there's not a lot of ways to raise revenue other than through fees or taxes.
If I may add something for the discussion, I see Director Fisher wants to jump in. So if we raise the fees, the idea is that we not only take care of the existing structures, but could explore structures down the road. We have an item coming up. We're going to talk a great deal about parking, and I've said, I think one thing we have to do is have a serious parking plan east of 5th Street, and perhaps even on the other side of 5th Street somewhere, that these funds could help go towards. So I would love to hear a little bit about what that plan might look like. If we're going to raise the fees here, if I could justify it to the citizens to say, here's what you're going to get in return other than just higher fees, that would be great. Director Fisher, would you mind? Is that all right, Chair?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Councilman Solomon, that's Mark On. When we did our last parking study, it projected that the cost of parking would only go up, and so would the maintenance of those parking spaces. And so at the recommendation of that study, when we adopted a fee schedule, it was done so with the provision that there would be an automatic increase annually that aligned with the consumer price index for the Midwest. And it's something that we probably, as a city, need to look at as a whole with all of our fee schedules. The cost of doing business is increasing. And to continue to provide the services that we are providing, we need to increase that amount so that we continue to have the budget to continue providing those services. So it's going to be a hard look that we're going to be proposing to council. But for today, in what we're doing, this aligns with what the parking study indicated we needed to do. The repairs on the parking structure is just one example, and that's $4 million. As we see other surface parking spaces that need to be resurfaced, restriped, additional ADA parking provided in the right-of-way, all of that revenue has to come from somewhere. And this increase in rate assists us in doing that.
And will we have an update regarding the parking study that's due this summer to tell us where we might have future parking downtown?
So the parking study RFP is going out right now. We're sending it out to stakeholders, and it is anticipated that it will not be completed until the spring of '24. And at that time, that is a part of what we have projected that we want looked at very seriously. Are these the appropriate rates? Should our meters be raised, as they have in similar cities across the nation? We still only charge $1 an hour. And as a result, we're having parking issues downtown where it's easier for an employee to feed the meter. That's 8 hours a day rather than parking in the designated permit parking spot. And that's become quite an issue that we're facing right now as the parking structure is being repaired. Those kinds of conversations are ones that we're going to be bringing to you in the near future. But the parking study, with those experts, will be looking at that, and we will be looking at what is the parking that's needed, not only west of 5th Street, but also east of 5th Street. The School of Mines plays a big part in that, and we're trying to establish that improved corridor between the two. With those increases in activities, we anticipate additional parking needs. So we're looking forward to this study and giving us some great direction, as our last study did.
Thank you.
Director Fisher, when was the last parking study? Was it 2019?
2019.
2019, right, thank you. Mr. Nordstrom, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Couple of other notes that I've got on the user fees. My question has to do with TIFs and the application fees. Am I correct in saying that the TIF application fee is at $2,600 per application? For Director Fisher.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I believe that's $2,500.
25?
Yes,
Okay.
that is correct.
Okay, and then help me understand the rationale for the application fee being, say, for example, we've got a TIF coming up here. So do I understand correctly, their application fee was $2,500?
Correct.
And then when there's a $1 million TIF that comes in, that's still, say, for example, an application is still at $2,500?
Correct.
And then the other issues that I've seen faced with TIFs coming in, there are tens of millions of dollars coming in and more complicated. Is it still $2,500?
That is correct.
Something that we need to take a look at. I think we got something terribly wrong there in that area. And then one other issue, and as a general comment, is that I think we need to take a look at all the user fees in general, and if we're doing that possibly next spring in conjunction with the parking fees, I think that would be a better fit, in my opinion, but that's to be decided by the next council. So I remember when we were doing the priority-based budgeting process, the biggest item that I kept hearing from the public was that they did not want to see property taxes go up anymore or any additional taxes being put on it. but their number two choice was to use or increase user fees, because the users are getting that for that dollar amount, whatever that fee is, and it just looks to me like this whole user fee schedule needs to be readjusted in some way, somehow. So I would hope that the next council will be interested in doing a major study to the entire package that we have for the schedule for the user fees, because that's what the citizens told us a few years back, is that they want to see this versus taxes going up. And I won't be here to support it, but I think that's something that the next council really strongly needs to take a look at, is the entire fee schedule. That's all I have at this point.
Thank you, Mr. Nordstrom. Mr. Jones, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just some comments, not really directed to anyone for answers, but just some comments. We know that the parking study is going to take place, but we also know the optics of what a lot of people are seeing and telling us right now, that we're losing parking spaces and we're not doing anything to replace them. That's what is going on right now, and that's what people are seeing. So we have to use some common sense here and look at things through a common sense lens and know what's going on and deal with those issues, because just to sit back and wait for results of study after study after study, although useful, does not address pressing concerns and take good care of our citizens. So we have to plan short-term and long-term to address this thing, and the parking thing continues to be a major issue, a major issue. I talked with some people who work downtown about it, and you know they're doing exactly what some people have said. They're just pumping the meter because it only costs $8 a day to park. And I mentioned to them, well, what if the cost doubled after 4 hours? Would you still do that? Oh, well, yeah, that was very surprising to them, and that made them think. And we also have to address the perception that the parking ramp is not safe. That's the issue that some people, not a lot, but some vocal people have had, is they say they're not going to park their car in the ramp because it's not safe. And I don't agree with that. I think our downtown is safe. I think we can do a better job with public safety, but I believe our downtown is safe, and would encourage people to, use the ramp for what it's meant for and allow parking so customers can park downtown. If everybody does the right thing, everybody benefits. But this, the idea of we don't need more parking and we can just sit back and watch parking keep going away and going away, I don't think is a good visual that any of us want to be part of. We need to continue to strive to meet that need of surface parking, accessible surface parking for our downtown areas and others, the surrounding. Thank you.
Okay, good discussion, gentlemen. Thank you. Moving along to community development, number 8, approve resolution number 2023-038, a resolution to create tax increment financing district, and approve resolution 2023-039, a resolution to adopt the project plan property, generally described as being located south of East Omaha, west of Campbell Street. We've got Mr. Nordstrom in the queue. You have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Do we get a short presentation on this, or the reason I'm asking is because I'm normally on a TIF committee, but I was in DC when this TIF committee was meeting, and so is it possible to get a brief presentation on this?
Go ahead.
Yes, in fact, you'll see that Sarah joined us today just so that she can do that. I would just like to preempt her presentation with, both at the TIF committee and the Planning Commission, there was great discussion and it was vetted well of the 9.5 million request. And the two things that came to light is that this is a TIF that creates 180 housing units. The entire project is affordable housing and meets the criteria for affordable. And unlike most of the TIFs that we bring forward for your consideration, this one is located in an area that it is actually infill development. And so it checked two big boxes for meeting the criteria for consideration. And with that, I'll turn it over to Sarah.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you. The proposed district is to be known as the Sagebrush Flats Tax Increment Financing District. It will be number 90. Here's a great aerial image showing what Director Fisher was just referring to, with this approximately 21-acre district being located just east of downtown in an infill development site. This is the property that's east of the Subaru complex, and you've probably driven past it many times, and it's been vacant and undeveloped for quite some time, so we're excited to see some development here. So the yellow boundary is the district boundary. It's, as I mentioned, it's about 21 acres in size. There has been a planned development approved for this project. It's zoned office, commercial, and light industrial district with future land use of mixed use commercial and light industrial. The city's major street plan. So it's the Planning Commission presentation, so I'll skip over that. If you hadn't had a chance to look at the site plan for this project, you can see it here. The 180 units are going to be provided in 2 separate buildings that are 4 stories each. There's also a considerable amount of open space and a dedicated play area for the people who live here as well, for their children. Here's a zoomed in view of that site plan. Here's a photo simulation showing what the development will look like. This would be looking south from East Omaha Street and looking back from Campbell to the northwest. Here's some site photos showing some of the topographic constraints on this property, probably part of the reason that it's gone undeveloped for so long. Looking across the site here towards the west, this is looking to the east along East Omaha, and looking to the west along East Omaha Street. So this TIF is, the project plan includes about $9.4 million in project costs. About half are associated with what we'll call just generally horizontal construction costs that are in accordance with state statute. And there's another just under $5 million included for financing. This is from the applicant's application. This really is the list of improvements in totality of what they would be using the funds for. It includes elements that we see in a lot of our TIF applications, grading, sanitary sewer mains, public infrastructure. There are also some elements that would be considered sometimes more of a private site development, and so with that we are structuring this TIF as a grant option just in order to kind of acknowledge that some of these project costs are a little bit outside of potentially what we would see for a greenfield TIF, but in looking at it being infill and looking at it meeting affordable housing criteria. Mr. Jones, I'll go into detail with this one specifically because we talked about it a lot and had a great discussion on the last one. So where are we at with value today? The property is valued at just over $6 million now, and we are projecting a 19-year payoff. Now, something that staff looks at with every TIF application is the feasibility of it paying off. We did take a close look at this one being 19 years. It's kind of right on the cusp. So we did have some conversations with the applicant looking at what their underlying assumptions are, the values that they were projecting, and in a lot of ways they're being conservative with the future value because they're not projecting any increase in value after complete construction. So we have to assume that over 19 years the property value will go up, and so that will probably play in part into some of these estimates being a little conservative. But we do look at that from a variety of factors. You know, what are comparisons, valuations of other apartment projects and such, and so we did take a close look at that. Since Rapid City TIFs are developer funded up front, there's little risk to the city, but we do look at that with the evaluation of the project. Here's their amortization schedule. They are showing a 7.5% interest rate and accumulation up to $4.45 million. This is a sort of condensed down version of the project pro forma. With every tax increment financing project, we look at what are the costs associated with the development, what are your revenues, and how is tax increment financing filling a gap. So here you can see what some of the costs that they'll have. They've sort of broken these down into broad categories, looking at land, hard costs, soft costs, contingency, and then looking at how they're funding this project. Something we see participating in affordable housing advisory boards and other conversations in the community is that this is subsidized housing. It needs support from a variety of partners, and so we would expect to see that, and we do see that with this TIF. The Black Hills Community Foundation is providing a loan. This project is using federal low-income housing tax credits, which is wonderful to see, and they're also providing some of their own equity. So if you have any questions about the pro forma, please let me know. I'll do my best.
Great. Thank you, Ms. Hansel. Mr. Jones, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. Some questions for Ms. Hansel?
Go ahead.
Thank you very much. Sarah, early in this presentation, you were showing what the finished product would look like. Could you go back to that, please, for a moment? Little further back. Okay, yeah, right there, thank you. So we have 129 units and 51 units. Is the area portrayed green here actually going to be green space?
Yes, some of it would be provided like in open areas, lawn areas with grass and landscaping. And what's not super easy to see on this site, but there's a small square in the bottom right-hand corner, and there's a playground and a basketball court as well. And there's also mentioned, you can't see that there's no floor plan up here, but they're also providing interior community space for the tenants as well, like areas for mentoring students or a computer lab, other resources available indoors in addition to that outdoor space.
Is that area identified by the yellow in the bottom right-hand corner?
The yellow is showing infrastructure, but there's a pink square, and that would be the basketball court and the playground to the west of that.
Thank you. Go forward now a little bit to the finished product. Okay, so the green area that was identified as green, whose idea was it to ensure that there was green in the project?
Oh, good question. We actually look at open space with all of our apartment complex developments. We look for a minimum 300 square feet per unit. 400, excuse me, thank you. So we look at that with all apartment complexes. We do want to ensure that there's safe and high quality space for folks to spend time outdoors. That looks like different layouts and different environments. So we look at that on a case-by-case basis, but do have benchmarks in place.
The green area is vitally important because it's an asphalt jungle down there as it is in some ways. And so having this green area will help. This is the kind of stuff that sustainability is all about. It's breaking up the asphalt, it's breaking up the heat producers, and having green spaces that make life more comfortable for everybody. And I'm happy to see that this is in here. There are a lot of projects in Rapid City that we wish would have had green space, and it's great to see this being the norm rather than just, oh, oops, there's green. This is what we want to continue to have happen, so thank you and well done. Some projects that the city has done through a TIF have required variable rents in the units. Will this project require those?
Great question. So the TIF policy has a set of criteria that applicants can choose from to show what they're meeting. A lot of times they'll talk about workforce housing, but they're not meeting the criteria in the policy. This project is the exception to that. They are meeting the criteria in the TIF policy. So the TIF policy says that applicants have to make 80% of area median income and pay no more than 30% of their income. And that has to apply to at least 51% of the dwelling units in the project for at least 10 years. This application actually exceeds that by a far degree. All of the units are between 30 and 60% AMI as opposed to 80%, so it's well under the in terms of how much money your household is making and what you can afford, and it will be held affordable for more than 10 years. And to accompany that information is the rental mix that they're providing, so you can see how many units are being rented at what percent AMI, ranging from 30% to 60%, and how that translates to rent. So, anywhere from $429 to $1,300.
Fantastic. Go back one slide, please. So, just so I'm clear, there's 180 units, 51% of them have to fall into this formula, so 91, 92 units will be in that financing or in that rent range.
Even better, 180 of the 108. Well, one of the units is a manager's unit, a person who lives there on the site with them. So let's say 179 units will be within that 30 to 60% AMI.
Awesome. Thank you. One last question. Of the funding package, is there any funding being done locally with any of our local banks or lending institutions?
I believe that Bank West here locally is working with this applicant.
Wonderful. Thank you very much.
Any more
This is
questions?
good news.
It's excellent. Any more questions? Mr. Nordstrom, you have the floor.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. This project looks fairly straightforward, simple. We don't have any incentives for them due because of the current TIF policy, am I correct? There's no other incentives for them that the city can provide. I should
Oh, thank you.
qualify that.
I don't believe this project is using community development block grant funds, but they are leveraging other local sources. The Strategic Housing Trust Fund that's set up here locally provides low-interest loans that revolve, and they are using that. So I'd say the city's main contribution, if approved, would be the tax increment financing district.
Thank you. Yeah, because I'm starting to see some of these TIFs that are on the outside edge, and because I'm involved on the CIP as well, we run across issues with oversizing, and there's no real funding. I mean, we've got a funding source, but it's not real funding source. We kind of have to grab some dollars from some places to do oversizing. Have you gotten far enough along in this application process to find out if this project needs oversizing?
I don't believe it does. They have submitted their plans for this project, and I'm not aware of it including oversize.
Thank you. And I think that's something else to take into consideration for the future council, to look at a TIF policy that provides some incentive for this type of project, or a reverse, given de-incentivize the people or increase some fees for people that are causing oversizing. Because just from the CIP angle, there is, we're running short of money. We haven't got much of a budget, and especially now the Parks Department has taken a big hit in the CIP, which brings me, my next subject here is that I appreciate the questions on the green space. That's one area, looks like a great sledding area on that steep hill that's on the east side of this property and adjoining the property to the next. So I think that's another plus that we can have for the residents there as well. Can we talk a little bit about checking the boxes? I know some of the things that you're providing for us are allowing us to check some additional boxes. And I think for me, the biggest one is being able to provide for jobs. Can you elaborate just a little bit more on these two items that we see on this screen here?
Sure.
Plus jobs?
Thank you. This screen is looking at what the requirements in state statute are for. So this is that at least 25% of the area is blighted, or that at least 50% of it will stimulate economic development. With this being an infill site that's gone undeveloped and has topographic constraints, we certainly found this project to meet that criteria. And also that the improvements will enhance value of property around it, which also was found to be met. To go on to do you want me to go on to the city's TIF policy as well, just briefly? Okay. So these are our 5 goals that we want to see TIF used for according to the policy. So looking at redevelopment of property, particularly blighted property, stimulating increased private investment in areas that have remained undeveloped, meets that one. And then stimulating the construction of safe and affordable housing units, which also is met in this application. The TIF policy lists allowable project costs, several of which are included in this application: extension of off-site infrastructure, interest in financing, and the imputed administrative fee due to the city. We did talk about the $2,500 application fee earlier in this meeting. In addition to that, every application also has a $20,000 administration fee, and that comes from the revenue in the TIF, and that comes out usually in year 5. And then there are costs that are not allowed by the TIF policy unless authorized by the city council. So here that would include some private development site improvements, property assembly costs, and clearing and grading of land. There are several other aspects of criteria in the city's TIF policy. Some of it's a little bit redundant with state law, but it looks at blight, ensuring that there's no loss of pre-existing tax revenue to the city, that the project demonstrates that it's not economically feasible without the use of TIF. And this, again, is that criteria about affordable housing, the 80% AMI, 30% of income, 51% of units in 10 years, with this being a minimum standard. Again, number 4 is for affordable housing, conditions of blight, and that the developer will agree to waive the 5-year tax abatement. That was all I have for the presentation.
Thank you. For me, that's very helpful. And I'd like to see as many check boxes as we can get on there. So this fits a lot of them that, to meet the satisfaction, not only for the TIF policy and the state law requirements, but it also helps me buy into the program as well. In the application, I read something about a grant in there. Do you have that information available in front of you? There's a grant that's identified in there. Yes.
Most likely that's referring to the structure of this tax increment financing policy being set up as a grant TIF. The state law, there was a change to state law made several years ago that allows cities to use a grant option. That can be used in a variety of ways depending on the community. In Rapid City, we've only used this option 3 times. This would be the 3rd one, and it just, the way that we currently are referring to this is just that it's a little bit more flexibility in the project costs as authorized by state law.
One more question for you on the AMI. What is the AMI right now? Do you know?
It's about $50,000.
$50K, okay.
Yep.
And so that means that helps establish the rental rates. Am I reading that correctly?
I'm sorry, could you repeat that?
Sure. The 50,000 helps establish the rental rates so we can get actual affordable housing.
Yes, the 50,000 approximately would be based on 80% AMI. So if you go look at a 60% AMI, that's even less than that. This chart isn't showing annual income, but you can see what rents would be based on, if you're a household that's earning 50% of the median income, your rent in this complex, based on current rents, would be somewhere between $716 and $1,100, depending on how many bedrooms you were renting.
Sure, yeah, which makes sense. And the, I'm looking for some, hopefully this question is appropriate, but I think there's some policy changes that need to be done to the TIF policy, shall I say, to incentivize people like this with projects like this to come forward, whereas other projects that we see multi-million-dollar projects going forward, but they need oversizing and other things that go along with that. So this type of project needs incentivizing, whereas the others, maybe not so much. Or think about reversing that so that these projects can move forward. But let's see if we can't collect something for the big dollar and more complicated issues. Hopefully I'm making sense.
Yeah. Madam Chair, if I might respond to that. I agree, the city's comprehensive plan makes it a priority to use tax increment financing in infill areas and limit its use in greenfield areas. But we don't see that being the case. Most of our TIFs are used on greenfield projects. And so I don't disagree with what Councilman Nordstrom is mentioning that, so this project, for example, is an infill site. It's encouraging affordable housing. It also doesn't include oversizing. So kind of looking at, our goals, oversizing can be an important outcome. It's one way to look at a regional benefit, but not necessarily the only way to look at community benefit. So yeah, we agree with kind of thinking out of the box with how we can meet our community's needs through this particular financing tool.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. I yield.
Thank you, Mr. Nordstrom. We'll go to Director Fisher. You have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. In response to whether or not this TIF or why it didn't have oversizing costs, Sarah explained it beautifully in that this is infill development. This is exactly where a TIF should be used. It's encouraged by state law. We have so few of them. 95% or more of our TIFs are along the perimeter of our city, and in most instances required that the acreage in whole or part be annexed in even for the project to come forward. You are correct when Councilman Nordstrom, you made the statement that we need to incentivize infill development. And a TIF could be one way that we could do that. As Daniel and I are talking and getting creative on how we can use these TIFs in a more positive manner, that's something that we'll probably be bringing to you as a part of a discussion, is that these that are truly taking land that's otherwise left undeveloped and meets the definition of blighted, this is the location that TIF dollars should be spent on. So it's great that we have this one before us to set such a good example. Unfortunately, we have so few of these, and we need to change that.
And I just want to commend Community Development and Ms. Hansel. You did an awesome job with this, explaining it. Kudos. Keep up the great work. Okay, with that, I would welcome a motion, because we're at the end of the consent items, 1 through 8. Okay, we have a motion by Mr. Jones, second by Mr. Nordstrom. All in favor? Aye. Anybody opposed? Motion carries. Moving to our non-consent items, 9 through 12. Public comment is open. Do we have any additional? Okay, we'll close that. Move right along to number 9, our City Attorney's Office. Introduction, first reading of ordinance number 6574, an ordinance to update bid law purchasing limits by amending section 3.04.090 of the Rapid City Municipal Code. Director Landine, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Every couple of years, the legislature amends the bid law requirements and increases the amount that, the minimum amount that requires bidding. And we generally, our ordinance has always reflected the bidding amount. So it allows purchases to be made without council approval and just takes into account inflation. So when the state updates their bid amounts, we usually update ours, and this is the cleanup ordinance that does that.
Great, thank you for that explanation. Any questions? Mr. Jones? You have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. Question for the city attorney.
Go ahead.
Mr. Landine, what is the amount being raised to?
It looks like it's 25 to 50,000. Is that the only increase?
Mr. Jones, anything else?
Yeah, that's correct, yeah.
Okay, all right, I'd welcome a motion.
Move to approve.
I have a motion to approve by Mr. Nordstrom, second by Mr. Roseland. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Moving on to item 10, a request to temporarily remove recycling and yard waste containers at Fitzgerald Stadium during the Firecracker Tournament from June 30th, 2023 through July 4th, 2023. Alderman Roseland, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I make a motion to approve this item.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Mr. Roseland, second by everybody. You want to continue?
Yes, may I retain the floor?
All right.
Yeah, about 3 or 4 weeks ago, I got contacted by Coach Torve from Post 22. I wanted to know if we can get, if the city can help get the containers, dumpsters removed from the parking lot. At that point, it wanted to be removed permanently, but obviously that cannot happen until we find a better spot for them in the west side of town. And so I let them know that I would look into this, and I think most of the work is done by the stakeholders out there who did a lot of work trying to get this done. I'm here to help push this along, and so I appreciate all that you have done and the comments you made today. I know it's going to be a great compromise between Post 22 and 320 baseball, and I feel like the city did its job very well in assisting in this, and will help in the future to help in the time when the time comes during the tournaments, that we'll give a notice probably a week beforehand or so, let the people know, the citizens know on that side of town that those are going to be removed, and they can either go to the landfill or the containers on Anamosa Street. So thank you very much, and I appreciate the support on the council here.
Great, we have a couple people in the queue. Mr. Solomon, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I want to commend Alderman Roseland for bringing this forward. Thank you, sir. Appreciate that. I also want thank the Public Works Department for cooperating. There's a quote from Seth Godin that says, "The less people know, the more they yell." I would recommend that we get really good at communication on this, because in the summertime, we're really busy with especially our yard waste. And so I would hope to have a great communication plan, not just not just a simple soundbite, but a good campaign that goes behind this. And then, you know, we can look at the long-term effects, but obviously we want to show support for what this great program does, obviously out there with the kids playing and I mean, it's an awesome facility if you go to a game, and the idea of having more parking spots makes a lot of sense. And so I appreciate us working together on the short term while we seek what's in the best interest in the long term. Appreciate everybody's cooperation on this. I like seeing all these stakeholders come together and making this an easy yes. So thank you.
Mr. Nordstrom, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I too want to thank Councilman Roseland for bringing this forward, because I think it's a good idea. I heard a motion yesterday at the Public Works, and I believe it did not get a second in it, but my concern is from that motion, there's some indication that this would be extending it by a couple of days on front end and back end. I just don't want us to get into the position of micromanaging that division for the potential of them setting up the signs, the information that needs to be done, everything that has to go into connection with this project. So let the division do the work that they need to do. And so we're not getting into that. My concern is to getting into the micromanaging. So if there's somebody from Public Works going to address a comment or a question from me, I would appreciate Ms. Haas.
Welcome. Thank you for being here.
Thank you. Yes, Miss Hossie, by the way, but that's okay.
I've been mispronouncing it all the time then. Sorry.
That's all right. That's all right. Yes, we did ask when we started this process and we were approached. We did ask for a couple days on the front end and the back end in order not to tax our division, because moving those containers does take a bit of time. So we wanted to make sure that we had enough time and didn't have to bring in our employees and overtime and all of that, so that it was a safe and workable solution for all of us. As far as the communication, yes, Jesse Reeb, one of my program planners, he is working on this. He will continue to work through the communication process. I encourage all the council members to please reach out to your residents when they do call. I know sometimes this is a very hot topic, but I think coming together, like you said, and working as a group on this project will be very helpful for both sides. We will not be moving forward with putting signs up and that sort of thing. We are hoping that residents understand and will use it in good faith, and that it will bring some visibility to our challenges of that site. And hopefully, as residents, we will all look at that and work together to use it in a respectful manner. We will also work with our other departments to get some parking, help me out, stripes, thank you, to make sure that the parking there is safe, because there is a little bit of damage to that asphalt with our containers.
Yeah, thank you. I just had a couple people whisper my ear here about the communication side of it. So the big effort, I think, is going to, or the challenge will be getting the communication out to the users of that. And it's free, by the way. Is Mike correct saying that? The disposable yard waste going to these dumpsters is free?
To use, yes, to use the dumpsters, yes, is free. We do not charge as they roll in and dump things off, but yes, that cost is part of the fees with your water bill, so your solid waste fee that you pay.
So it's absorbed by another line
item?
It
is,
yeah.
Yes,
Yep.
yes.
And then the concern that I have is that we went through the similar issue with the Anamosa Street yard waste site, and the long time that it took to get that site back up in operation. The lots of phone calls, emails, et cetera. Primarily for me, it was emails for that yard waste up on the north side. So I assume that I'm going to get additional emails from this one as well. So You will be notified when I do get those, and then, but I think the communication part of it is very critical, and
Right.
and all that information probably needs to be repeated through Daryl as well, Mr. Schumacher?
Yes, yeah, we work with Daryl daily almost on all of our communications, and we will be sure to do that. I think it's important to understand that that north side site has unique features to it that the west side doesn't, basically the size of it. And you will also recall that when we shut that site down, we were going through some, that was last year, so we were going through some growing pains and labor challenges to maintain that site. That has currently worked itself out, so we are able to support that site as well.
True, and it was very difficult to get the people, the citizens, the users, to understand that we were shorthanded. It was a big challenge for us to communicate that. So I appreciate anything that you can get out as the word or messages to the public. And I communicate also by the app called Nextdoor, so a lot of my communication is held through that. So any information that you can share, I put it up on there as well. Thank you.
I would also say check our solid waste Facebook page. Rhea Harper down at Solid Waste does a great job managing that. So if you have questions or concerns, you can always post on that as well. It's a good resource for residents.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good discussion. So everybody, mark your calendars. June 30th through July 4th. The yard waste containers and recycling containers will not be there for the firecracker tournament. Thank you. All right, we've got a motion on the floor and a second. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay, moving right along. Finance Department, Director Ainsley, acknowledge March 2023 sales tax report. You have the floor.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. This is the typical report that is presented to you each month regarding the sales tax. We did provide some additional information just based off of questions we've received from residents about where their tax dollars go to. So we tried to make it a little more visually appealing so that people can understand that. But in general, the 2% general sales tax for the month of March was up 1.9% over the same month in 22. For the first quarter, we are up 4.12%. We are on trend to exceed our adopted budget. In the Triple B fund, March was actually not a great month. It was down 2.9% versus March of 22, but for the first quarter, we are up 5.7%, and which also exceeds what we anticipated for the adopted budget.
Wonderful. I'll take a motion to acknowledge.
Second.
Yeah, motion by Mr. Solomon, second by one of the Pats. All in favor? Aye. Aye. Any opposed? Thank you. Okay, moving to our last item, item 12. For our city attorney's office, provide an update on the status of the city parking lot adjacent to the Stock Growers building. Just real quickly, I just want to acknowledge Ms. Lowing. I did not mean to cause any heartburn. I just wanted a quick status update on that. I'm under the impression that we're not making any major decisions from the dais today, but I just wanted a status update. And then I am unfortunately have to leave because of a family emergency, and Mr. Nordstrom's going to take the floor. And if we need a fifth person, we have Mr. Evans in the hallway. Sorry about that. Okay, thank you. Musical chairs.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman Armstrong, and good luck on the family emergency. Going to the, and I'm trying to get organized here once again, going to the item, Mr. Landine, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Let me get you in here 1 second. Try that.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As Alderman Armstrong indicated, she asked me to add this. Frankly, I don't think we're ready to take action today, but I did want to update you that the Board of Freeholders met. The Board of Freeholders consisted of Alderman Roberts, Alderman Evans, and D'Amico Rodriguez he's the chair of the Parking Advisory Committee, and then Vicky Fisher from Planning, and I also sat in. A value has been determined. When I told Ms. Lowing and also told Ms. Kruger that I was not prepared to disclose the value yet because I haven't even disclosed it to the council yet. So the they I was referring to is the council. And I need to get you, I want to get you an email, and I was going to also identify some other issues and things. And then the intent would be to continue this discussion to the next Legal and Finance. And I think at that point, we would have items linked to the agenda. The value would be disclosed. There's no intent to not disclose what the value is, and then ask for direction at the next Legal and Finance and City Council meeting. So that would, I believe it'd be the 16th. I can't remember the date. I think the council meeting moved to a Tuesday, but it would go through Legal and Finance. And at that point, everyone would be aware of the value, and staff would be seeking direction from the council as far as how you want to proceed. Do you want to sell it, or do you not want to sell it? How do you want that to look? So those are the things, and that's what I want to put in the email and get out to you here in the next couple days.
Thank you. Mr. Solomon, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Nordstrom. Direct a question to Director Landine, please.
You may.
Do we need a motion today other than acknowledge this, or do you need us to, because you said continue, but I don't,
well,
this is really just an update, so I don't know.
It is. I don't think it should be on the council agenda for Monday night,
No.
so people show up. So as long as it's clear, I don't really care if you acknowledge it or continue it.
Okay.
Because I'm not going to be at the council meeting Monday night, and then people tend to show up. And I mean, obviously, if somebody wants to show up and speak at public comment, they can. But I don't want to lead that there's going to be like trying to make a decision or sneak something by. I think the discussion after you've been fully informed of the value and the comps and things, and can have a chance to digest it, then the discussion should occur at the next meeting.
I agree. No rash decision, and we don't have any information. So I would move to continue this to the next Legal and Finance Committee meeting.
Chair, here's a motion and a second to move this to the next Legal and Finance Committee meeting. Those in favor? Aye. Those opposed? Motion carries. Yep, you are indeed. You have the floor.
Thank you. For Mr. Landine, please.
Yes, you may.
Is there a reason that we can't tell these people what the valuation is at this time? The more we dance around it, and the more secret it appears to be, the less transparent we are, and that feels yucky.
Well, again, I would prefer, there's a range. I would prefer that the council get that first, and that you have a chance to weigh in on the valuation before I disclose it publicly. I just don't feel comfortable disclosing a value that you haven't even seen yet, and you're going to have people contacting you about the value, and you're going to be like, so.
Well, the news story, the story that was on TV News last night, and the lady from the South Dakota Stock Growers, I'm sorry, Donna? Doris? Okay. The last night, the story was as if we'd already decided we were going to sell it and it's done, and all that is decided. And when I was watching the news, I thought, gosh, what did I miss? Because we haven't done any of those things, nor do we plan on at this time. And we want to make sure the pace of this thing is not just rushed through. So.
Well, and that's why I agree. That's why I don't want and didn't think, frankly, it wasn't my decision to put this on the agenda today. I don't think it should have been rushed through. And I don't think, but I also know that this was discussed several weeks ago and people were wondering where we were at. So
yeah, we were told at a council meeting that it would only take 2 weeks to come up with the number and all this, and it feels like it's been more than 2 weeks.
It has. I apologize for that. But I would point out, I watched the story last night as well and was equally surprised. Frankly, that news station has run 2 stories now in the last 2 weeks where they haven't even bothered to reach out to us for a comment to the story. So not much we can do about that.
Well, I apologize to the lady from the stock growers that this put you in, you know, a sense of strife and concern. No one's trying to pull the wool over anything. No one's trying to rush through or act in a way that is not prudent. And so I'm sorry that you went through that, and I'm sorry you're continuing to go through it, but we're going to take this thing at a proper pace and so everyone can know what's going on. One of the things we talked about the first time this came forward was, can other people have an opportunity to buy it? If we're going to put it out there, it shouldn't just be just for Property Meld. Should other people be allowed to buy it? And I think that's still an important part of it. And another question that is still unanswered is, Property Meld is a lot of things. And we seem to have a positive feeling about Property Meld in our community and the things that they've done. But there's a lot of layers to Property Meld. And I'm not sure exactly who we're doing business with here that's wanting to buy it. Is it Property Meld, the local company? Is it Property Meld, the investment firm? Is it Property Meld, the company that manages properties? I've been looking online a lot trying to learn about them, and I can't even get a phone number to talk to anyone from Property Meld. So I would like to know who we're doing business with specifically before I would ever consider just selling this land to this amalgamated thing called Property Meld. So I would ask that that information come forward to us as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's see. Chair is just kind of mulling over some couple of comments. I think I'll reserve that right till we hear exactly what the dollar amount is, and then we can do the public information at that point. But I think I agree with Mr. Landine that it is premature to not have the information, and then we're going to make a decision on which way to go. So I think we have to do the slow, methodical, step-by-step process. Let's see. I'm in the queue, so go ahead, Alderman Evans.
I just want to make a comment. Since I sat on that panel, I was amazed. 2 independent sources came forward with their estimate of what it was. They had not shared any information before. And amazingly, I think the 2 assessments were within $20,000 of each other or something. So I think it was consistent, no funny business going on, so you can be assured that none of that happened. Just wanted to make that comment.
Thank you. And Mr. Solomon, you have the floor.
Thank you, and I know let's get done with this. Just a point of clarification, Property Meld is not the one looking to purchase this. Mr. Gagne and his partners are developing the property. Property Meld simply leases from them. So I just want to make it clear, they're a software company. They're not the ones actually developing this. They are housed there, but it's owned by a different development company. Just, I don't want misinformation floating around out there that this is somehow Property Meld's doing. They're not. Of course, they want to expand in the building that's built there, but they are not the builders themselves. So just thought I'd throw that out there. Thank you.
Thank you. And not seeing any other discussion, the chair will entertain a motion to adjourn. Motion made and second. Those in favor? Those opposed? Thank you.